Hello, and welcome. This is Danny Muniz, and thank you for joining us for today's conversation on practitioners and the collective wound. Across cultures and throughout history, healers, mystics, midwives, astrologers, herbalists, spiritual practitioners were often oppressed and suppressed, dismissed, persecuted, or forced to operate in secrecy. Those histories didn't disappear. They left a collective and ancestral imprint that continues to shape how practitioners relate to visibility, authority, boundaries, and support today. In this episode, we're exploring how spiritual authority was gradually removed from community based healers and concentrated into institutional systems, how fear and mistrust of spiritual knowledge became embedded in culture, and how those patterns still echo in modern practice. Rather than framing these experiences as personal shortcomings, this conversation places them in a wider historical context. I'm joined by three practitioners bringing grounded, lived perspective to this topic. I'd first like to introduce Tamala Lyons Price. She's a weaver who supports individuals in reweaving their lives through breath, movement, and embodied awareness. Her work centers on polarity, balance, and relational healing. Next on our panel is Anna Serafine. She is a transformational shamanic healer, spiritual mentor, and feng shui consultant with more than 2 decades of experience supporting practitioners in clearing inherited patterns and restoring alignment. And we have Shiloh Greigers, is an intuitive guide and facilitator through evolving bubbles, working across multiple energy and divination modalities with a strong focus on compassion, support, and lived understanding. Thank you all for being here today. Let's begin with our first talking point on historical suppression of healers. Now, we've all seen it, right? How our healers are marginalized, persecuted, or even dismissed across some cultures and belief systems. I'd love to kick this off with Tamala, with what do you see in this area?
Well, one thing that I've personally noticed when it comes to practitioners, no matter what practice they're in, is people continuing that space of, well, I don't know if it's truly real.
Ooh.
People needing this validation, but I feel like we came up in a society that it's not real unless I see it.
Ooh.
But then when I personally started practicing, I remember that my mindset was like that, like, oh, I've got to see it to believe it. Until there was one woman, I decided that, hey, I'm going to take this mediumship class. I'm going to go into it. Why not? And this woman spoke to me in a way that hit me so hard because she described to me a picture that I've never showed anyone. Not even my cousins knew about this picture or anything. And the guide that she described to me, she tells me this woman's wearing a dress and she has an apron on. And she describes that dress to a T. So I was like, there's no way that it's not real. Like, there's no way. And that's when it started pushing me forward to even go deeper. But I think our society being in this space of it's not real until I see it, that's where we kind of have to bring that back, because it is. It's just keeping us separate from who we are. We're natural beings of intuition. We're natural beings of just knowing. And so that's like, let me get off my soapbox. That's my,
I
that's my
love it.
thoughts.
I love it. I love it, Tamala. Anna, what well, you're shaking your head like yes. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, as Tamla was speaking, I was recalling, like, I'd always been super psychic and intuitive, and my mother was, she would have visions and stuff. So it's not like I didn't grow up with it, right? But I remember when I was studying feng shui, and we were learning how to clear negative energies using Archangel Michael. And back then, there was a part of me that did not believe in angels. There was a part of me that, was skeptical about it. I was like that show me kind of, thing. And um, it wasn't until one day I decided to experiment because I felt that there was something off
Mhm.
with me, that I picked something up during one of the space clearings we did as a class. And because I had a migraine and all that, and I felt this thing get pulled off of me. I called in Archangel Michael. I'm like, all right, let's give this a try. And he showed me
Mhm.
that it was real. And I just remember going, okay, now, got it. But it's true. I do think that we come from that mindset. And but I think that that's more of a recent history type of mindset, because back in the day, people believed in everything. And I was just, I live in Spain. I've been living in Spain for like 11 years, and but I'm a nomad, right? And the town that I'm currently in is called Avila, and it's the home of Santa Teresa, who was, she was a, Catholic saint, but she was a psychic medium. She would channel angels. She would speak to angels, and people would find her levitating off the floor, like in the morning, after a night of like talking to the angels. And she was actually brought up in front of the Inquisition, even though she was the head of the Carmelite nuns. She like reformed the whole Carmelite order,
Yeah.
and she was brought up in front of the Inquisition because she dared to do things a little differently. She didn't quite follow that. And I mean, I consider her a healer. I consider her a psychic medium, a channel. She was an extraordinary person. But even though she came from wealth and privilege and was the founder of this, or the reformer of the Carmelite nuns, and she had a very powerful position, she was brought up in front of the Inquisition, and it was Saint John of the Cross, who was her twin flame. A lot of people don't know that,
Not know that.
who defended her in front of the Inquisition. He defended her. So she needed someone to step in and to protect her, which she had. So it's like it's kind of an interesting thing for me being here and
Yeah.
reflecting on this question, because I am in a place of so much history. And she, I think, is a great example of how healers and women, especially, were really marginalized. And the fact that she achieved what she was able to achieve despite all of that prejudice, or not just prejudice, power, power. That's really what it was, right? They didn't like that. She was kind of uncontrollable.
Mhm.
She had something that they couldn't control.
Absolutely. It's interesting you bring up, Anna, the that the trials and the Inquisition, things of that nature, because I feel like that is kind of where some of that belief started, in the sense of you got to see it to believe it, because the quote unquote healers, witches, of that time, they had to, you know, prove in many ways that they did this right, and so many didn't want to prove because that's what got them, burned or whatnot,
Murdered,
or
yes.
persecuted. Absolutely. So I feel like, from you saying that, Tamil, I'm like, yeah, like I can see where that belief of let's see it, right, came through from both of those kind of standpoints. Shiloh, you have some thoughts that I could see swirling
Yes,
your
I do.
head.
I
Bring
do.
them forward, girl.
So for me, when it comes to that, so I grew up in a different background. I grew up as a Christian, um, and was raised a certain way. And then even in my experiences through that, it wasn't right. Nothing was right. So I'm gonna do quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
As a young child, I was always, I was always too much. I still am to some. But in that, to me, it always seemed to be about control. Everything is about control. How can we keep people to not tap in to their power, to their truth? And in that, it reflects back even in Christianity back in the day. Jesus was persecuted, and I believe he was a wonderful healer and alchemist, right? We have all these people that are saying, even if they do see and say they want to see it, they really don't because there's fear in it. I know as a young adult, I transitioned and went to a non denominational Christian background church where I was so in tune with, I don't, then I called it the Holy Spirit. Now I know it's just the magnitude of all. I know everything's all interconnected, but I was having experiences. I was helping deliver people in the aspect of removing things from themselves. And it was because of the belief, the faith of knowing that it can happen, that we can make change. So to me, just this historical suppression in general is, to me, based off of control. Because if we let people think that they don't have free will, that they don't have choice, that they can't stand up and really change their life, they're not. Victimhood, I believe, is one of the biggest things that any form of any control is. If we think that you can't just because you're less than, then you're not going to surpass that. And part of this for me is I still deal with that. I still sometimes get scared because I've been told that I'm toxic positive because I can see things in a different perspective, even though I feel my feelings, you know? And coming from, like I said, the Christian background, which is part of my journey and I needed it to be able to, transcend. But I don't follow any dogmas because I see where all of them have these pinpoints where they're literally trying to pin you in a certain space to keep you here so you can't elevate. And that's part of what I think us as healers, and I do healers because we do it within ourselves, right? We can help. To me, I feel like I don't heal. Now, have I seen healing happen? Yes, but it's because the individual feels safe enough to be able to access into that dimension where, look, I'm getting emotional, I got chills, where healing can happen. It's because we feel safe, we feel seen, we feel loved, heard. And I think that's where it started from, I mean, eons and eons ago, where, they had to prove that, like you said, the proving, you had to prove this, you had to prove this. They were like, oh, well, this God isn't real, this one is, and stuff. And it's all like, but it all essentially happens within. And so I think, yeah, that suppression, I think it's it's continued for eons and centuries. And I don't even believe it's just been on this plane either. So
No, I would
just
agree. No, absolutely not. And I would also say I do feel like I know we're talking about how it has been prevalent. I do feel as if that is shifting a bit as we're moving into these times that we're in presently. I think I do
right.
really there's a lot of hope I have. I'm an optimist, so I feel like there's a lot of hope as we're moving through that. One of the things, though, I do see within myself, and I would love to hear your thoughts on these, is the idea of our ancestors, right? Because I'm under the belief that we have a lineage, right? Whether that's a soul lineage, or this particular soul's lineage, right? Like we have a lineage and we have ancestors and we're carrying their DNA within our own DNA. And I feel like there are imprints, there are memories that we hold both positively and what I would say a little bit more challenging or that
Yeah.
maybe negatively, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see that either within your own self or in the collective as a healer?
I feel like it is definitely very prevalent. It happens. There's times when, and anyone who's ever experienced and done either a meditation where they've seen a past life or have accessed and communed with their ancestors, some, I believe, are wanting us to transcend and get to the space that they couldn't. But again, I'm going back to the victimhood. Some felt safe in that victim space. And so they almost, that imprint can I'm going to use the word shackles, can shackle us into a space where it feels like, because it isn't a territory that we are familiar with, nor were some of our ancestors, that it kind of tethers us back into that space. I personally, a lot with my own ancestry, and I haven't dug in like DNA, as in 23andMe and all those things, but I do it as in, the soul remembrance. And I sit and I can see where the patterns are. I mean, just how can, for me, for instance, I love trees. Never thought I'd love a tree, but I can sit with a tree and talk to a tree. I know that didn't just come from me. It came from my ancestors being able to sit and appreciate the nature. And so then it trickled through. And I also believe, and I've done it within myself, is where I do, just like Tamala, where it says she's a weaver, I've woven my own, where I'm like, okay, this cord may not need to be fully cut because it's part of me and it's helping me transcend the collective, but I can weave it and say, hey, this is where this can be. Let me show you what it can be. Just kind of like when we work with our inner child. Let me show you that we are here now to make the stance that you tried to, and we're going to continue that. So that's part of the legacy for me in the ancestry of saying, hey, let me pick up where you were trying and let me just take it farther than you have even imagined, and vice versa. I hope I pass that down to my grandchildren and everybody, let's keep it going. Let's not just, blow out.
I would 100% agree. Yeah, bringing that forward. Tamala, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was listening to Shiloh and I was like, wow, yes. And that's where the Holistic Weaver title was birthed, was from my ancestors. It was from the space of that, I have family members that, and now they are ancestors now, but that worked as shamans and laid hands and did the different things, helped people with medicines that was made by hand. My family, I lived in Arizona for about 30 years, and we came back to Maryland about 5 years ago. And when we got here, all of a sudden, I can't even explain it, so I'm like, okay, source, this is all you. I'm here and I'm ready for it. And all of a sudden, these different things kept on just coming up. So, all of a sudden I knew stuff about plants, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not a plant person. I am what I call a black thumb. So, I kill plants. Yeah. And, I talked to one of my really good friends, and he is a psychic medium. And we're having a conversation, and I said to him, I don't know why I have this desire and this burning thing in me that I just know random things about plants, and I don't know. And he's like, girl, when I come down there, I'll tell you all about it. When I come up there, I'll tell you all about it. So when he came for my wedding, he was my maid of honor. He was like, okay, so your family lived in this life of herbs, of different things, just labeling things off, and then talking with my mom afterwards and talking with other older family members. They're like, oh yeah, this person, they were this type of practitioner. This person was this type of practitioner. And I feel that we end up feeling it, and it comes through us so powerfully. That's where the Holistic Weaver came from, because it was random modalities that kept coming in. And so then just weaving things together, and it's like my life weaved together. Don't get it twisted though. There's still some moments where I'm like, oh, I need to have a conversation with ancestors about some of these things they want me to do.
Right, right. Like, okay, I love that you said that because I think there's sometimes even for me, like that I've gotten and I'm like, wait, what? Like, wait, what are you asking me to do? Like, wait, what? Like, not with it, like I can't comprehend it. Like, how do you, like, I'd be curious, Tamla, how do you, like, when you get that, when you're like, wait, what? Like, how do you handle that?
Let's ride. Let's do it. Let's do it. So at first I was always really scared. And it was only because, my dad was Roman Catholic, but he wasn't someone that practiced. My mom was Southern Baptist. And, the first time I learned how to read cards was my friend's mom taught me when I was 15.
Wow.
And then because of my fear of being shunned, she was like, I'll teach you how to read playing cards. I'll teach you how my ancestors helped people. And so she was from Irish background as well as myself, and she taught me. And so for me, it was hiding a lot.
Yeah.
I hid my practice a lot.
Yeah.
Until we moved here. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm coming out. Like,
Yeah.
Right? It just felt good, and it felt okay.
Yeah.
One thing that I talk about with a lot of women when we go through like my classes or something, and I say, remember, you are your first client. The self-love romance starts within you.
Yes.
So all of that stuff, that filling of your cup and all that has to start with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a title. It's an embodiment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We feel what we do. It's not something that we're like, oh, hey, yes, sprinkle, sprinkle, and there it is. We're like, we feel it. This is it's in our bodies. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Anna, like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I feel like, I've learned some really great stuff from that been able to pull forward, right, from my ancestors. But I also, my mother, who, I believe she's a beautiful mystic, never really came out in that way. She was a visionary. She could see things and know things that you could not have explained, but she never allowed herself to step into that identity or, as Tamala, you just said, that embodiment of that mystic, of that healer. Those are beliefs that I carried with me. When I think I was probably 9 or 10 years old, I had a vision of my grandfather who had just passed away walk through the front door. My mom saw the same thing because she turned around. She was in the kitchen. She turned around. She looked straight at the door. I had seen him just walk through and out through the back of the house, and we both were there. We both saw what we saw. My grandfather was not there, and yet she dismissed it and just kept on going as if nothing happened. And that, for me, shut me down for a very long time in being able to acknowledge that there was something other than what I was physically being able to touch or feel. Anna, how about you? Like, did you have any experiences where this kind of collective ancestral ideas or belief systems came through for you?
Oh yeah. My ancestry is I'll tell you what, on my father's side I'm Greek,
Okay.
and on my mother's side French, German, and Swiss.
Oh.
And my mother, much like yours, was a visionary. She was extremely psychic. She would have visions, she would have dreams, and she really opened up during menopause, which was very interesting.
Interesting.
And we would talk, like, she grew up in a haunted house because her grandmother was the town witch in a little town in the middle of a German town in the middle of Missouri.
Wow.
It's actually quite well known. She was the town witch but not in a good way. And what the last decade or so, I've been unraveling my French ancestry. It's super dark. They practiced black magic. They they did. I've learned so much through shamanic work, both for myself and with other shamans, and unraveling a very, very, very um, dark bloodline, like really not good. And my mother was terrified of her abilities. She didn't deny them. She did suppress them a bit because it scared her so much. She was an alcoholic. And I know it's because she was trying to close her third eye. She didn't want to see, right? And but she never tried, thank God, they didn't raise me in a religion in particular. I really respect my parents for this. They're both Christians, but they never forced anything on us. And especially on me, it was like, you need to make up your own mind. So, I'm so grateful for that because when I was a little girl, like 3 years old, I would talk to my mother about our past lives together.
No.
And she would try to say, well, that stuff, there's a lot of debate about whether past lives are real. She goes, I don't think they are. And I was like, no, they're real. Like, I just was like not having it.
Yeah.
I would talk to her about when we lived in Paris, and she's like, we never lived in Paris. I'm like, no, before. I was 3.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And so, there was an interesting kind of mixed message given to me through my mother's bloodlines of like complete acceptance of all of this, mixed with secrecy. I mean, there were things like someone on that side of the family would see a black dog before someone died. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
People would have visions, see voices. My mother told me once, and this I find this heartbreaking. She told me once, this was, I think, during that period of time when she was really open and opening, that she had a dream where she was taken to a beautiful, I would say a temple, and she called it the Book of Life. It was her Akashic records. And she was handed the book and told, read it, it's yours. And she was afraid. She told me this. She goes, I was afraid and I told them no.
Wow.
And this breaks my heart that she was so afraid of that, when really she was being given an incredible gift to be able to look at that. So over the past dozen years, I've been kind of unraveling my ancestry and realizing that many of the gifts that I have came from my mother's side, but not all, because what I've come to understand, on my father's side, my grandmother was a very like strict Greek Orthodox. You go to the Greek church on Sunday, and she was very, very strict. But she also, was like, oh, I have an angel that's with me all the time. But I realized that the witchy stuff comes from my mother, but the shamanism comes from my father. The shamanic, that connection to the earth, that's purely my father. When he died, we had him cremated, and I said to my brother, I feel like we have to have a shamanic ritual for him, because my father's religion was nature and music. That was his religion. And so my brother, I didn't even realize I was a shaman at the time. My brother was like, well, you're the shaman. You do the thing. So I did a fire ceremony for him. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just doing it. And then we took his ashes to the Hudson River. I'm originally from New York, and set them afloat in the river. And we were on the New Jersey side. And I'll never forget that after the ashes, disintegrated, went into the river, we all turned around and there was a deer
Mm.
standing and staring at us and just watching us. I'd never seen one there before. And then after it looked at us, it was clearly, it was, I felt that presence, and it just ran away. It just ran away after it saw that we saw it. And so I feel very honored to have that. I know that I won't ever be able to really find out my ancestry on my father's side because they were, probably peasants, and they didn't keep records. There's very little known about that side of the family. But through shamanic work and other types of, through healers, I can, you know, unweave the story and get to the origin and find out more and more. And that's something that I'm really interested in doing because we all, I think we all need to know, or many of us, especially those of us who are healers, it's good for us to know what we come from, where we come from, even if it's not so pretty, like on my mother's side. It was so important for me to know where I come from with that and to be able to clear it and heal it, because that was my job. I'm the last in that line. I don't have children. The bloodline's it ends with me. And I know that I'm here to wash that clean because there was some stuff done that was unspeakable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you shared that, Anna, because I think sometimes we look at, our ancestors, or we look at even our past lives, and we want to look at the times where we did such amazing things and we were queens, and right, we were these leaders that rebelled against just. And I love that because I love that we have that, can look back and bring that forward and remember that aspect of ourselves. But there are also parts of our lifetimes and our ancestors' lifetimes that were not so pretty. And we are carrying a lot of that baggage. And I love that you said, Anna, you're here, right? You know that, you don't have children. I don't have children either. And I know that I'm here, to break some of those things that are not so pretty, that we don't want to carry on in our ancestral lineage. Shiloh, I'd love to know from your perspective, do you see things that maybe are from your ancestors that are affecting you today in how you are showing up as a healer, in this time that we're in here now?
I believe so in different aspects. I don't know of anyone in my family that necessarily had any experiences or gifts into this. I believe everyone has access if they choose to so open themselves, because we are all interconnected from source. So I do believe that wholeheartedly. But to me, I was raised that all of this was evil. It was bad. I was gonna so, and when Anna was talking about how her mother was numbing herself from experiences, I started at a young age, at 13. I started experiencing with drugs and alcohol. I was with that. I'm a big feeler. I'm very empathetic. Didn't even know that term until probably, I think, 4 years ago. I had no idea what that meant. I have a background in medical. I was in EMS and things of that, and I would just hold all this stuff. So I've always been in roles where I have assisted people and I've helped and I've been compassionate. But when it comes to that, my main thing was fear. And like you said, secrecy. I've never been able to be myself. I come from the Gulf Coast of Alabama. We didn't have where I lived. We didn't have MTV growing up because no, so there was a lot of different things. It was literally like it's changed some. But when I moved up here after my dad passed, and I was having experiences before that in the Christian faith where I was seeing things. I was doing psychic surgery within myself with angels, and I was being I had spiritual warfare going on where I had these. I don't necessarily call them demons now because I noticed that they're lower vibrationals, but I was having those kind of experiences where people thought I was crazy and insane. And so when my dad passed, my dad started visiting me like into a space of like, I was like, dude, what is happening? Like the dreams and all that stuff. And then I was remembering and I was like, oh my gosh, I've always been able to do this. My parents always told me, oh, you didn't see that, or that didn't happen, and it wasn't because it was because they didn't understand, right? I don't think they did it intentionally per se, but I had experiences and had other experiences, and I had these amazing, I must say, I'm going to do this. It's not really theatrical, but theatrical like experiences, especially even in the Christian faith. When I started, I don't call it this now. Now I call it light language because I have multiple languages. But when I first was able to speak in tongues, so I was in a church, and half of the people believed in it, and the other half thought it was evil and it was bad. They didn't think dancing was good and all that. Like it was just like all this. So I left and all these things. But after my dad passed, the fear of everything and him started to show up. And I was gifted 4 years ago on the solstice by my ex father-in-law, my first tarot deck. And I just started playing with it because I manifested it. I wanted to know, like, what is all this stuff? I started reading all these books. I started being like, there is something more out here. How is my dad communing with me so much and telling me secrets to tell my mom? My mom's freaking out, wondering how the hell do I know this? And I'm like, Dad told me. I don't know how to explain it. And prior to that, I've had premonitions where they usually came in dreams, and I'd wake up and I was like, oh, this happened to me. And then the next thing I know, it was very similar. So in that, fear was a big one. And I always told everyone, especially when I started opening myself up, I moved up here and I was like, oh, I can start. And so I started to unraveling. I started journaling. I quit smoking cigarettes. I was able to take myself off anxiety medicines and things because I was like, let's get back to this, But in it has been the fear, like people are going to lock me up and they're going to think I'm crazy, because where is the line between me? Because I'm a channeler. So I do mediumship, but I also commune with different realms, and I can see things, and it's crazy and it freaks me out just as much as it does the other people, but I trust it because there's no reason I would feel it or experience it without. But there is that fear that people are going to look at me and be like this, or ostracize me in ways, because when I left the church, it kind of happened. I left a community, it kind of happened the same way. So it's like, that's where I'm still breaking the chains along ancestry and just in the collective as being a person, is that I don't have to live in fear, because, well, it doesn't do us any good. It's one of the lowest vibrations, it keeps us tethered and held. And so to know from that, my main thing is I'm not going to go down in silence anymore. And I'm going to do what's best for me, because that's where I am embodying that self-love. And that's why I tell people all the time, the clients I work with, hey, I know shadow work, inner child work is scary. I know looking at yourself and sitting on all this is scary. But guess what? The reason I know that I can assist is because I keep doing it continually. I mean, especially this last season, this last few weeks has been really rough on me. And that's where I know it's not just me, it's the collective shift. And I'm like, but I know that every instance that I sit with myself and look at myself true, even with the ick or the ancestor ick, and I look at it and say, no, we're gonna rewrite that. We're gonna clean that out. And it doesn't mean rewrite the history of things that have happened and saying it didn't happen, but it's saying I'm not going to I don't want to carry that bondage with me anymore. And I think that's where the collective is, in that fear of like, because when you say something, you either have someone saying woohoo, or you have people saying no or nothing, which all gives us different experiences, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, this is great, and I love that you moved into this idea of fear, because I do see it. I not only see it in myself, but I see it in other healers that I've engaged with, that I've worked around, that I've been around in groups and communities is this idea of fear of being visible and or the authority in the modalities that you've been trained in or that you've learned through your ancestors. So I know that for me, when I first started working with astrology, I kept my, I want to say front facing marketing messaging was very much like, let's overcome your limiting beliefs. Let's get you right. I was like a little, I can't even remember what I called myself at the time, but it was like an empowerment coach, right? Like that kind of very traditional, like a coach that's going to help you empower yourself, right? I never ever told my clients that when I was getting their birth information, that I was looking up their charts and connecting some of the dots of some of the work that we were doing just based on their astrology. I not once told them, because I was so afraid to say that I was even into astrology or that I was using astrology in the work that I was doing. And then, there came that point where I came out of the spiritual closet and was like, oh yeah, and I do all these other things, right? And was able to start talking about it. But there was a long period of me where my front facing image was very much like, Danny doesn't do that stuff. That Danny's not that, I'm not a healer. I'm not a spiritual person. I didn't want to be labeled as that because I thought people wouldn't respect me. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that is where some of those ancestral kind of ideas that my mother had and on, here I was not fully owning who I was because of this fear. And I see it in the healers and not wanting to show up on social media and talk about spirituality, do panels like this or on YouTube, TikTok, although we're starting to come out of that, but I would love to, ladies, where has this shown up for you? Where have you seen this in your practice or in your building your own, business as a healer?
In the very beginning, for me, I was really trapped in the spiritual closet. I was so trapped in there because, I would start out and I was talking to my cousins about them. They're like, oh, you read cards? Oh, that's demonic. And then, then it was, with doing Reiki. So I, trained in Kundalini Reiki. And then it was oh, you lay hands. And it came from other people that were also from the same culture that I'm from. You know what I mean? Like even as a woman, it comes from men too. I really feel that sometimes in the work, we can get hit with those things. And so on social media, it was very hard for me personally to start coming out because other people that looked like me were like, oh, that's not real or that's demonic. And then I won't even get on my soapbox about religious doctrine, but and even stepping into that a little bit, I'm like Shiloh. Like, I believe Jesus was an ascended master. Like, Jesus could do all of these things because Jesus was a healer. Jesus was an alchemist. But it's none of my business. But like, I hid a lot. Like, I can't even say that enough. I hid a lot until I got this life coach, and he said to me, he's like, why did you train in all this stuff if you're just going to hide? And I was like, dude, you're kind of rude. He's like, bro, I'm being honest with you. Why are you gonna, you're just gonna hide? He's like, what's the point of you even doing it if that's all you're gonna do? He's like, there's people out there that need this kind of work, that need this kind of healing. He said, you can offer a healing that I couldn't offer as a life coach. And he's like, there's many people out there that do it. So why would you do the training? Why would you put all these years into that if you were not going to put yourself out there?
Ooh,
I know, right? Shiloh,
Yeah, I got my tissues.
let me tell you. And
Powerful.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I just, even the thought about it, you know what I mean? Like for me, my background is I'm someone that was an addict for 18 years. And then I checked myself into a holistic rehab, you know? And after being clean for 10 years, I realized that the number one thing they always said is that it's none of your business. It's none of your business what they think of you. It's none of your business what over there thinks of you. What matters is that you keep your side of the street clean and you do good things. You're not out here harming people. And so that's really, yeah, it was that life coach and the background, you know, that finally pushed me to go and do it. And now I'm so happy I did.
Mhm.
So happy I did. I've met so many beautiful, beautiful people that have become my own mentors that I get to mentor, that I get to work with, you know, and get to do beautiful things like this, like meet with other practitioners, you know, and get to be in the space of like, I'm a strong believer. I don't have any competition. My only other competition
Yeah.
is me. I am my own competition. Because at the end of the day, I do not want to be better than Danny. I do not want to be better than Shiloh. I do not want to be better than Anna. I only want to be better than who I was the day before.
Yes.
Yes.
And to be around other women that are like that, you know, because society wise, we're told, hey, you're supposed to like, you need to be better than this person. You need to have the big house and the 2.5 kids because you got a dog and a cat. And like, I don't have kids. You know what I mean? I was not blessed or given that, you know, in my life. But like, that's why I love working with women because like to be able to help women step out of that space of the hiding because it's so easy. I think that's why many of our female ancestors hid because they were always silenced. And when
Correct.
you step into that feminine power, like Teresa, you know, when you step into that feminine power, it scares people. And the only people that are going to have a problem with what you're doing or going to say anything about what you're doing is because they're not doing anything.
Yourself, yep.
They're not doing less. Doing
Well, they're
less than you. That's
scared.
the only reason why anybody has anything to say. Okay.
Anna, I would love to hear since you know your family was very, you know, I guess forward facing about being in the more spiritual kind of realm and working with these kind of things. Did you find that, you know, did you have that fear of you know being a witch or being a healer, right? Or was it kind of more of maybe some of their fears? What was it for you?
It's a really interesting question because and I don't think I've ever really thought about this in this way exactly.
Mhm.
So, like, I've always been someone who, like, from like birth, who knew who she was
Yeah.
and wasn't gonna let anyone. I'm very stubborn, like super. I'm like Scorpio with a Taurus moon,
Oh.
really stubborn. Okay, I'm like the most stubborn person in the world, and like if I don't want to do something or if I think I'm right, that's it. That you know. So it no one was able to condition out of me
Mm.
my sense of who I was, and also because I was raised with especially my mother. You know, I mean, in the house we had Linda Goodman's sun signs, Carl Jung, uh, Edgar Casey,
Wow.
Chariots of the Gods. I mean, this was like on the bookshelf, okay?
Wow.
So my mother was always reading that, but always with that fear, you
Yeah.
know, because she was really scared of it, but she was curious, right? And also I have a Gemini rising, so I'm curious about everything. So to me, like, and it was also, I'll never forget when I was about 13, 14, when I was in uh, my grandfather had died by then, but my grandmother's house, again in Missouri, Um, I saw a shadow man at night. He came to me and was threatening me and breathing ice cold air on my face. And I was a cranky teenager from the Bronx, and I just told him to F off. Like, I'm like, you don't scare me. And then the next day I told my mother, and I just turned my back to him. I'm like, you're not going to hurt me. And the next day I told my mother, and she freaked out because she had seen him all the time growing up in that house. So that's, so it was, and she also had enrolled me in like some study for psychic children, or there was some kind of organization that I don't remember exactly. But so that was all accepted. But there was also this overlay of doubt over everything. Like, and my father, even though he was spiritual in his own way, he was also like, that stuff's not real. Like, he would come from that place. And my brother now is like completely, he claims to be an atheist. He, pretends to be an atheist. That's what I say. And I think the way this showed up in me was, I don't even know if self-doubt is the right word, but I'll never forget when one of the very first healers I ever worked with, the first words out of her mouth were, "Why are you hiding?" Those were the first words out of her mouth. And I was like, what? She goes, "You're hiding. You're like this huge light, and you're like, what are you afraid of?" And I didn't know what she was talking about. And there was also the first time I did readings for people. I was actually writing about this today. I'm going to be it's interesting synchronicity that I was thinking about this story when so about like 19 years ago, a friend of mine called me up and said, "Anna, the New York Theosophical Society is having a psychic fair. You've got to volunteer and do readings. You'll get business from that." And I was like, "I don't know how to do that for people." She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, because I'd never done it for people, right? Like for as like a job, right? I'm like, "I don't know how to do that." She goes, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Of course you do." She goes, "And you can be better than probably everybody else there. Do it, do it, do it." She like nagged me, like, you got to go do it. You got to go do it. Call them. Did you sign up? So I did. And I had in 4 hours, 16 people getting readings from me and a waiting list.
Wow.
And it showed me like, oh, right. But I had so much like insecurity around this. And I think that's the way this has expressed itself through me is lack of belief in myself, um, thinking that I'm not anything special, like, maybe partly because it was normal for me. So I'm like, well, everybody, um, but also just a lot of self-doubt, and it came, and I think it's very subconscious. And when I was having my Akashic records read the first time, um, something interesting came up. I call it the Cassandra complex. She was the one who spoke prophecy. She was telling in ancient Greece, she was predicting the Trojan War and saying this is going to happen, right? And nobody listened to her. Nobody believed her.
Wow.
And I felt like for a long time I was carrying that in me. And I think a lot of it came from past lives where I was horribly traumatized and persecuted and so on for that. But it's come out in little, very subtle ways with this like lack of belief in myself, not really, not, I've never been afraid of showing who I am. I used to be an English teacher, and everybody knew me as the English teacher who also talks to angels, has angel cards on her desk, who does Reiki. I mean, the students, they weren't kids, would come to me like after class and want like to pull cards and talk about angels and all that with me. And I just was myself. I'm like, this is who I am. I'm a feng shui So it wasn't that fear of putting myself out there.
Yeah.
to the world as this, but underneath it, real doubt that what I have to offer was really of value, and it's all very subtle and all very deeply buried in the psyche. A fear of using my gifts, because I know that in past lives I abused my gifts.
Yeah.
And also in my bloodline, I was saying they abused their gifts. So it's more subtle, but it deeply affected me.
Yeah.
And I think I'm finally just now starting to really allow myself to be seen. And because I know that's also part of my path is to be seen. I'm supposed to be seen and heard, like a lot. So it's actually um, it's a very deep thing in me. It's a deep pain
Yeah.
that I think is finally almost
I love it.
almost.
I'm glad it's almost gone. I love this conversation around fear, and I think I see it a lot as we've been discussing. I also see that it kind of shows up in some other ways, that not only from a fear standpoint and a visibility standpoint, but also, these belief systems that we have ingrained in us, culturally, collectively, and that is around, how we show up around some of those boundaries ideas. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where we start to overgive or undercharge, or, not fully accept our abilities, which can lead to pricing, right? I see a lot of times where healers will undercharge, and it's this belief system that it should be for free, like everybody should have access to this, so I'm not going to charge as much so everybody can have it. And I can understand that, and it's also like, why might that be showing up for you? So I'd love if
Yes.
we could start. Shiloh, how about we start with you? What do you
Sure.
see?
Yeah. For me, the overgiving and undercharging and stuff started with an undisclosed, unknown savior syndrome for me. So
Mhm.
for me, it was all like, because this is where I this is my boundary line across. Everyone has access. Everyone can do the same work that I do. They choose not to. So if you're going to ask me for my advice, if you are going to message me on Facebook Messenger or this or that, and all these things, and if I counter, hey, this would be a session, let's do it this way, and then crickets. But at first, it was because, again, my background, I was told, you're meant to serve, you're meant to serve. All I've done my whole life is serve, especially when I did medical things. I just gave. I served tables. So to me, it is a free, beautiful gift. But guess what? I had to do it. No one else gave me this. No one gave me this access. No one else sat there with me doing all the journaling, all the shadow work. No one else. And so how I try to, and I still do at times, and this right before we started recording, I was like, look, I still have some issues in some certain pieces, because I am very grateful and thankful that with all the inner work that I've done, that I'm able to see multiple perspectives. And there's times that people come to me for advice, but I've been asked for advice since I was a child, and not just by other children. I mean, as a child, I'd be 8 years old and having a 20-year-old ask me, like, I don't know why, but it's because I allowed myself those accesses, right? Even then. But to me, with the overgiving was because I was in a space of feeling so stuck, so misunderstood, and so alone for so long that I didn't want anyone else to feel that way. But what I realized is, just like many of us have talked, because again, I had my own addictions and alcoholism and things of that nature, it's not going to change unless you want to change and you want to put in the work. And it is hard. And there's times I do discounts, or I was part of a few groups where I'm all like, oh, you give me a review, I'll give you a reading, and I will. But guess what? They always want to know about. So I'm not downing any platform. I've tried on TikTok. I will probably never go TikTok live and do readings because all they ask for are the same things. And I'm like, I am not a diet fad. I am not going to tell you that someone is cheating on you, because if you think it, guess what? They are. That's it. Trust yourself. Don't ask me this or this. But what I have to know is that, and just like Anna, I'm meant to be seen and heard as well. And I know that. I've known that ever since I was little. And some of these pieces of the overgiving and stuff is, I remember, like I said, in my Christian background, I was like, ooh, I don't know if y'all know of her, but Catherine Kuhlman, she was a healer. She would walk, she would have auditoriums and people would fall out. They'd walk out of wheelchairs. I mean, arms would grow, like all these things. And I was like, oh, that's who I'm going to be. I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it. And at this time I was a young adult and I was told, no, you'll never do that. That'll be your ego. And I'm like, are you serious? You're telling me, someone who has this dream of bringing healing to the world, you're telling me not? And that wasn't the first thing. So then, move on. And there's always going to be people who can tap in and see glimpses of your shine, and they want to box you closed, because guess what? Just like Tamala said, I'm here all about collaboration, not competition. But I can't help it when people come and think that I'm being competitive because I can access differently. Just because I access differently doesn't mean that it's better. It's just a different perspective. And I think that for me, in that overgiving is sometimes trying to prove myself. And when I realized I don't have to prove myself. And I've learned to hold the boundaries, because again, people will write me and they will want, will you just tap in and tell me what you think of this? Or will you just do this? And I'm all like, you want to schedule a session? And they don't. And guess what? They can get mad, but I literally have said, if you trusted me enough to be in your energy and trusted me enough to give you clarity and guidance that is channeled through me, but don't want to energetically, like either through barter or monetarily compensate, then you're not wanting it. You're wanting a quick fix, like you want, the next Atkins diet. And that's not who I'm for. And it is hard, because I'll tell you, there's times that, I have people left and right messaging me wanting this, and this. And there's also times where it's literally crickets. And there's times that I get upset with, I say spirit or source, and I'm like, how am I going through all this? How am I breaking all these chains? How am I rewiring, reweaving, doing all these things that I know, not just for me, but for the collective, but yet I still feel here. And I know it has to do with me. It doesn't even have to do with any of them. It's still my fear, my limiting beliefs, and me thinking that someone's going to tell someone I'm crazy. And then the next thing I know, that I'm in solitary confinement by myself. Which I wrote this down because I wanted to bring it across. There was a doctor in the 1840s named Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, who literally was put in asylum and locked up because he was the one that decided that there should be hand washing in between cadavers and embalming and birthing babies, because he saw all of those things. They literally said he was crazy because they're like, you think we're practitioners and we're unclean, we have to wash our hands? And he ended up dying in an asylum because they thought he was crazy. And guess what he died of? Sepsis, because someone transposed other things. So I tried to tell myself that, and I think, again, like what Anna said, when I think a lot of us as healers and people that are supposed to bring this health consciousness, to light, is we are meant to be seen and heard. And it doesn't mean that they're going to accept it and be ready for it. Because a lot of us have to do some of the work before others even acknowledge that it's existent. And then when it comes to me for the overgiving and undercharging and all that too, and like you said, the past, to me, I know that I spent some time in Lemuria, and in that, I knew I was a healer and this and that, but I also did things more out of the ego in that area. I feel it. I know it because I fully, because again, I believe past lives, I call them past lives, but I think they're all parallel and kind of run into each other. But I've seen where the things are. And I think for me, that's where it's hard for me to charge, because in certain instances in the past lives, I did overcharge or I do that. And I don't want the responsibility. That's also a big thing for me, is responsibility. People think, oh, I'm going to lay on your table and you're going to do Reiki and things are going to come up. I can't guarantee what's going to come out. I go where spirit leads me. And if you have, this ball of trauma, that's pinned up in your left ovary, and that comes out and brings all this stuff up, it's going to come out, and we have to, you still have to do the work. I can only do so much because, again, it takes, well, for one, I believe belief. Two, it takes the willingness to want to change. We get so comfortable in being in the same way, and even if it is oppression, because that's what we're used to, that when we finally try to, it is hard. And I get rebuttals all the time where people decide not to, but I'm pretty proud of it. I do mediumship and I charge $75 for 30 minutes. $150 an hour, and then for like Reiki it's $75 an hour. And I feel like that's even on the lower end for a lot of practitioners, but I also want people to feel comfortable that they can, but also know that the work that I put in and when I do, I believe wholeheartedly into it, and I don't do it half-ass. So that's my part in that. I hope that made sense. Thanks.
Yes, that made a lot of sense. I love your perspective on that, Shiloh. Tamla, have you got some thoughts?
Oh, I was giving snaps because Shiloh, ooh, girl, you hit on all of them.
Thank you.
But I wanted to tell you guys this. This is something that someone had sent me this video at this point in time. And there's a woman, her name is Carmen Badan. And one thing that she said that will forever stick with me, being of service is people pleasing and spiritual drag.
Ooh, see?
And when she said this, and this is a friend that turned into a client, and she's all, I just would like you to know this, just in case you try to decide that you want to go back and step back in that space where you charged less than you were worth, or you did this thing of, I want to heal the whole world. You see, I was a captain. That's what the way I looked at it. Captain Seva, and that's how I lived. And I use that very bluntly, and, but I was one of those people that felt like I'm going to save the world. And that's how I'm going to do it. And everybody deserves access and all of these different things. And it wasn't until the past couple of years that I realized, wow, I really did not damage to myself, but I feel like in a way I was damaging like everyone around me that was doing this purpose, walking in this purpose, and for me, I feel like from past life thing, I totally believe that we are a soul, that we've lived many lives. The skin bag has been around just for like 43 years, but my soul has been around for millennia. And we've all had many lives within our soul. And I believe they do run together. And I think that from one space at one point in time, I was someone that just people came and I gave. And, but I learned, hey, in this space, that's something that, we can't always do. And just like over the last year, I've really been working with that. And I realized that it came from containment. It was like expansion and containment go hand in hand. in my personal opinion. You know, expansion is that creativity, all of these other things. And containment is like the grounding, the boundaries. And you can't have containment without expansion. You can't have expansion without containment. And I feel like in the containment sense, what my body couldn't handle receiving more. You know what I mean? When I was in that space where I was like, oh, I'm just going to do it for free, it was because that's where my body was okay with being. So then I was like, okay, life coach was like, okay, now charge this. We're going to do little baby steps. He's like, okay, now try this. And I was like, dude, there's no way that's going to. Well, it took me like a year to get past just being able to accept this space. And then now teaching and certifying, you know, I'm able to be like, okay, well, this is the investment for it, you know, or this is how much the charge is for it. But I still have those moments because when I look at, you know, like our prices go up a little bit, you know, and my life coach, I freaking love this man. He will remind me even after we've been done with our life coaching stuff, even after he messages me, hey, it's that time for you to raise your prices. Have you done it yet? And I'm like, oh, I can't stand you. And he's like, so I went to your website. I get random. So I went to your website and I saw that you have this, this, and this. You know, that's where you were last year. I just would like you to know that I saw this. And I'm like, dude. But yeah, now I'm in this space where, okay, so now I'm like, okay, I'll raise it up this much and see what I feel in my body. Because to me, in my personal opinion, is that it really comes down to your nervous system. At the end of the day, it always comes down to the nervous system. If your nervous system doesn't feel safe, nothing. If you don't feel safe containing the receiving, you know what I mean? Yes, we could say, oh, you know, we give gratitude, we give this, we give this, we give this. But when it comes to actually receiving it, how does your body actually feel? I was somebody that like I didn't feel safe accepting more than what my mind said. Oh, this is safe to accept. Because if you charge more, then you're greedy.
Yeah.
You're not being humble.
Right.
And those are those things you have to break down, that good girl unlearning type thing.
I love that you said that, Tamala, because here's the thing, like we have learned these ideas from our families, right? Like I know for me, a hard one in just the idea of receiving was such a big expansion for me. I love how you called it expansion and concealment, right? I go with flow and form. It's just different words, but same kind of idea. And it's that idea that I couldn't for a very long time accept a compliment. And that's on the receiving end. A compliment is on the receiving end, right? I would downplay it like, oh, I've had this for years. Like, you know, when somebody compliment your shirt, right? Or when you'd go somewhere and then they would want to pay for I used to do a lot of coffee meetups, right? They'd want to pay for your coffee and I'd be like, no, I have to pay, right? Or let me pay for yours. And it was just like this, I couldn't just sit in the receiving of this person wants to buy me coffee or this person wants to pay me a compliment, right? And just sit there and accept it fully and completely. Like panels, I would always be afraid to speak on a panel because I was, you know, like they all have more to say than I do, right? Like it it was very much like it was hard for me to sit in that space and receive the spotlight, receive the space, everybody's eyes on me if I'm speaking, or just that simple little compliment that somebody was giving me. And until I started to really look at how am I open to the universe, to God, divine, how am I open to receiving from that space if I can't even accept a cup of coffee from somebody, you know? And I think that, but that came from my watching my mother not be able to do that, my mother downplaying that often, you know, or her over giving to people, and there not being that equal energy exchange in friendships, right, where she was always there to support them, but they were never there, or very little, right, not at the same level that she was there to give. And that subconsciously showed me and taught me a lot that I didn't even realize. Here I am owning my own business now and doing that in my business. Have you seen that, Anna or Shiloh? Have you guys seen that in your own business? Some of these belief systems that have come through that are causing you maybe to undercharge or to diminish yourself.
Definitely, definitely. Um, there's this the vow of poverty, you
Mm.
know,
Oh,
thing, and that, and here in Spain, you hear this a lot. It's yeah, I don't even work with Spanish clients anymore because they have it very ingrained in them that if you have spiritual gifts, it should be
free.
free or very, very, very low cost. It's like, well, I can't live on that. Um, so I, it's been a very interesting journey for me. Still on it. Um, the overgiving for me has been uh, my sessions are 3 hours or more in length. Okay. That's a lot. And I spend about an hour preparing beforehand. That's my day. Right. And I finally, like this year, raised my prices for the first time since in like 2 years, 3 years. And I know I should probably be charging more. Somebody told me I should be charging like $1,000 for a session. I'm not there yet. It's just like because then there's that programming of greedy. You're greedy, but at the same time, if I'm just living on the edge, worrying about can I pay for the roof over my head? Can I buy food? Can I pay for my Zoom? You know, then all of that energy is being taken and used in a very unproductive way. It's not helping anybody. So, to do this work, unless you have another job, you it needs to be compensated for. And it's great if people want to do it on a donation basis or a sliding scale. I have a plan that in the future, um, I want to have like my prices at a really good
So,
place,
yeah.
that nourishes me, right? Um, because I'm beginning to realize that I'm worth it, that this work is worth it. If it changes your life, you know, it's worth it. But I think like what I'd like to do is have a couple of scholarships available for that people have to apply for because it's very important that they put effort into it and consideration and really think about it, right? So, because like a few weeks ago, I had a former client come to me. This was someone who worked with me a couple of years ago, wanting one of the things I do is exorcisms. I'm a shamanic exorcist, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous work. And when I worked with him before, I've really undercharged. I worked on him and his entire family, like $175. Like, what was I thinking? That was insane. So I gave him the price of just a regular session with me, and he just starts arguing. Well, that's too much. That's too much. I'm a student. I can't afford it. I'm like, this is what it is. This is what it is, And save up, save up. I'll be happy to work with you. Which is what I do when I want to work with somebody. I don't think I have ever said to a healer in my life, "You're too expensive.
One.
You charge too much." I can't even imagine doing that. But I've had people say it to me, and there are people who charge way more than I do.
Mhm.
Right? There are people who charge what I charge for a 3-hour session for like 90 minutes, you know? So it's a very interesting thing because and I loved what Tamla was saying about the nervous system.
Yep.
I really because I this year I've been working a lot on that with a particular coach who it's all about expanding your nervous system so that you can hold more money, not just bring it in, but to hold it, right? And he continue to expand to reach more people so you can help more people. Because if we're living, in this place like this where we're so limited, money allows us to expand and reach more people. If you have to do everything with a free program, you're not going to get your message out there. People are not going to find you. You need to invest, and so that I think that has been a huge shift for me in my mindset over the years, as well as working with like the the beliefs that are in our subconscious that have been held by our nervous system to protect us, right? Because if we've gone through traumas and so forth, right? Um, it's like we want to go back to our safe space, right? Which is that smaller space. But when it's time for us to expand, it feels scary. Like, oh my God, right? So um, we bounce back. It's like a rubber band. Yes, we can expand, but can we hold that expansion, right? And so I think that because of the so much of the cultural and the religious stuff around healers being called snake oil salesmen and frauds and all of that, it's so internalized that we doubt, like, oh, should I charge the same amount as a lawyer or as a doctor? And I think we're beginning to realize, yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Maybe we should charge more than they do because what we do causes massive shifts for people that changes their lives. How is that not worth it? How is that not worth it? How can you call that too expensive?
We are changing.
You're willing to like pay for a new iPhone, right? Or to go to some sports game or what, like you'll use the money for that or some like computer game.
Yeah.
How is that worth your money, but not something that will literally change your life for the better?
I think that's where I kind of, I'm blessed that my love, he had kind of instilled that upon me, pretty early on of like, Danny, they're going to spend that money somewhere. They're gonna spend it somewhere. So why not spend it with you? And the people who, I heard this over and over and I had a really hard time like allowing it and accepting it. But when people pay, they pay attention. They put more effort and they're more committed. I know me, if I'm making a large investment with a coach, right, whether that's for business or my own personal growth, and I'm paying quite a big amount of money, I'm gonna get my money's worth in one way or another,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm going to definitely do the work. I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna show up differently, and I wish that wasn't the case. I wish I would show up the same if I paid $97 versus $10,000. I wish I would show up the same, but I don't. I show up completely different when it's a much larger investment. And so when I started to wrap my head around it, I was like, these people are committed. The people who are paying me at the price that I want to charge, or that I'm ready to step into charging, right? I want those people because they're invested in themselves, and their growth is right. Not that it's bigger or better, it's just different, and they feel different about it. And I'm like, that's the spaces I want to be in. Oh, as we navigate, ladies, I've loved all of this conversation. As we kind of navigate some of the challenges that we've had, how are you now? Like, how do we see this now for yourself in not allowing, swinging to the other side of, like, we talked about victim, right? Shiloh mentioned victim earlier, and she also talked about ego, right? So being the victim of, this is what my family has been through, and this is what we've struggled with, and this is my ancestral lineage, right? And also recognizing that we're not on the other side of, like, well, I should have all this, I am entitled to all this, like not be in that entitlement place. How do we bridge that, and how do we ground that as we move forward as healers? And really, I feel like right now we're really setting the stage for what future healers are going to step into. What do you think that looks like from your guys' perspective?
For me personally, I feel like I've got to remember that this was a gift that was given to me. So even though I am worthy, even though, like, I am in this space that I can do this work and work with other people, at the end of the day, it was given to me. So, like, I remind myself that, hey, ask yourself, where's this coming from? Is this coming, what in you right now, what is causing this feeling, this sensation, this experience that's making you feel this way? What's causing it? I know that, like, yes, we have some external stuff or whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's like, what do I feel and why? And there's times that I'm like, oh, I feel this way, or, like, we'll say in the moment of the ego coming out, like, oh, I feel this way because so and so, they need to, whatever it is, like, they're judging me or something like that. I remind myself, like, this was given to you. This is a gift that you have. You don't have to step in this space. It doesn't matter what so-and-so, that's none of your business. And so for myself, to keep myself away from the ego, I have to remind myself, it's none of your business. It's none of your business. Just take a step back. Ask yourself why. So that's where I am, is like, because the ego can come out in a minute. It can come out real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that at the end of the day, like, it's not mine. It's something that was given to me. So I kind of have to keep myself in check.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
I see it a little bit differently when it comes into that aspect, because for me, I think a lot of times when we talk about ego, people are only focused on the unhealthy, toxic parts. Because if we didn't have that ego pushing us, then we wouldn't step out and do any of those things. But I definitely agree. Self-reflection is the biggest thing. And that's something I tell people to do, all the time. And they're all like, oh, yeah, I self-reflected today. I'm like, today? Like, what are you talking about? I do it continuously. The more you practice, the more you can see and check. Because, again, I think that people keep thinking there's right, wrong, left, right, black, white, and they're forgetting that it all is intertwined together. For me personally, to keep it kind of in the repair and those pieces, for me, again, is the self-reflection. I sit with myself. If I can't sit with myself at that moment, I make like a mental little note. It's almost like I put a little pin tack into it. I'm my own worst critic. I always have been. I've always felt misunderstood my whole life. I still do. But the thing I realize is no one else is going to understand me. That's why I say understand. I don't even say understand. I understand me. I sit with myself and look at it. For me, it is really hard still repairing this because, well, just to be quite vulnerable with y'all don't, this is our first time meeting and stuff, but I was homeless for almost a whole year. Just recently have a space, not even a full space, but a bedroom now. So that's exciting. But in that, I could have gotten mad and said the situations of why this all happened and all these things. And believe me, I got upset and angry and all that at different times. But I had to look at, this is where I think people sometimes confuse me with toxic positive. But this is where I had to look and say, what is this going to do for me to understand myself? Why am I having to experience this and put myself here? I've recognized that receiving is very, very hard for me. It still is hard for me. Because again, people make me feel guilty for charging or this or that. But I'm also like, well, then why don't you sit for 2 hours and meditate and figure it out? Guess how I got here? From sitting, from sitting with myself, from journaling, doing all these things. But I do feel it's because it's the divine feminine is where we are coming back into the collective. The divine masculine, which is beautiful. We have to have both, right? But that has kind of been in the forefront and been pushing things through this ancestral for a really long time. And so in that divine feminine, we have to remember, not only is it compassionate, nurturing, and giving, but it is the receiving. Oh, my hands are, this sparkly. It is the receiving, because we tend to forget. We tend to think sometimes it's weakness to receive. Did I let everyone know that I have been homeless? No. Because again, there's a difference between being safe and vulnerable and then being open to it. Yeah. But I think it's more prominent in female presenting healers and stuff, because people are like, oh yeah, you're you're used to it. It's, through lineage, who took care of the kids, who cooked, who did all that. It's usually where the females, so they see that, but when do they get taken care of? Right. And that's where we have to say, oh, wait, I'm going to take care of me. No one else is going to love me and take care of me in that way. So one of the biggest things that I do, I call it, I have to change the wording a little bit because I say AAA, but for me, it's the awareness. Oh, something's going on, right? Then you have to acknowledge it. Then it's action. And sometimes the action is actually inaction, but that is still action because it's a choice. So when we sit and we're aware, oh, this really upset me. This person thinks that they want to ask me for this, but they don't want to. I treat everyone like they're a toddler, and not in a berating way, okay, how some people do. But you got to think awareness is a seed, so it blooms. So me that I'm aware of right now today, I wasn't aware of it 2 weeks ago sometimes, or even 5 years. Right. So it's looking at it as when that seed that is planted starts to grow. And what is the hardest part of the seed, which we know because we've just been through this new moon and the solstice, is that the hardest part is the dark right before we break through into that light. So this isn't just looking at ourselves as, oh, we feel we're in the dark, we're not fully understanding, even though we're looking, and then we realize, oh, wait, the light's right here. I didn't need a flashlight. But it's the same with others. So I think in that it's saying, for one, breathing, just breathing and sitting with self and being like, guess what? No one else has done and has been through exactly everything I've been through. They didn't have the cultural pieces. They didn't have the lineage. They didn't have this, the awareness, any of that. And so it's looking at it that no one is ever going to fully understand another. But to understand and know yourself is how you can repair that, because then you can show grace and that actual unconditional love for someone else who's coming to you, who is so scared in the dark, and they're just clawing and wanting to grab at everything. And that's what happens. They're trying to grab at everything because they forget that it's in them, because they feel so unsafe at that moment. And so I think that is the biggest thing, is just to be all like, the first thing I usually tell people before I start with anything, when we do, any work together, I'm like, oh, let's take a breath. And I usually start everything with like a cleansing and clearing, right? I'm like, let's knock off the shit on the outside before we even open up the inside. So let's think of it as having a sterile environment, make a sacred space. And then let's breathe and get comfortable, and then let's go. And every time that I've done that, which is every time, which is I'm very grateful for, but I have clients that get shocked by what they experience, what they see, and what they do. And they're all like, you did this. I'm like, no, I didn't. I just made you feel safe enough to trust yourself. And there was people along my path that helped me feel safe. And then I realized they weren't necessarily the safest, because that's where the negative ego comes in, right? The things of trying to be controlled and saying, oh, you have to do it this way or that way. If I feel like I need to turn 3 circles to the right, I'm going to do it. Don't correct me. I've had people correct me in ritual and stuff. And I get it. I get there's certain guidelines and practices. But to me, if you can fully just understand yourself, and it takes baby steps, because we got to look at all the ick. We got to look at it all. But instead of being mad at us, we can be all like, ooh, you didn't know better. Let me love you. Let me give you a piece of candy. Okay, let's breathe it through. Now, how could you have done it differently? And there's times I come to people and be like, hey, I hate that I reacted. And that's the big thing too. Communication. People don't know how to, and I get it, because I was the worst with it. We tend to react instead of respond. But through that is sitting with self again. So I just feel like that's how we can repair and do that, is taking accountability for ourselves, and no one can make us usually. I mean, there's some circumstances, but usually can't make us react or do something. It's our own shadows and things of when we haven't been seen or heard that causes that reaction. So that's how I try to sit and repair, is literally just sit with self and journal. Oh, I journal a lot. But I am so appreciative. So thank you. I'll pass it on to whoever.
Anna, Anna, did you have any thoughts around how we're moving forward in this repairing and reclaiming without that entitlement or that victim?
I think remembering that it's an honor and a privilege to do this work. You know, it's a gift that we've been given. It may be a gift that we've held for a long time, over many lifetimes, but it still is, it's our path. It's what we're here to do. To do it with the utmost integrity is kind of our duty, you know, to our, not just to our clients, but to ourselves, right? But at the same time, to honor ourselves for being the holders of this wisdom, of these gifts. And I'm remembering a conversation I had just the other day with one of my clients. He's staying with his father, who's recovering from some surgery. And his father is also very spiritual. And this client has been working with me now for about half a year or more. He's one of these perfect, ideal clients that now come to me that I'm so grateful for. And he said his father had a message for me, that he was so grateful for how I helped his son. And and the message was, this was a channeled message, that I need to start thinking about myself. What do I need? How do I want my life to be? Right? Because the way I've been living my life, I'm not happy with it. I don't want to be a nomad anymore. I want a home. I want to put down roots. Santa Fe is calling to me. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I've been like told that's where I have to go. It's like, okay, yes, got it.
Message received.
And it's message received, loud and clear. Let's make it happen. Then, if that is where I'm being assigned, but what he said, like, it almost brought me to tears. He's like, you need to have what you want now. You deserve to have what you want. You help so many people. You should have what you want. So I think that's the place I'm at right now, is that place between being fully conscious and aware of the privilege and mission and uh, obligation, duty, but in a good way, right? Because it's joyful. Because it's joyful, right? Because when we're on our soul path, when we're walking our path, and we're in alignment with that, and we're doing the work that we came here to do, there is nothing more joyful than that, right? But at the same time, filling my own cup, nourishing myself, and sometimes maybe being selfish, quote unquote, and putting up boundaries and saying, no, I need this. This is what I need. In order for me to do this job properly, I need these things, right? And that includes money, that includes all kinds of resources, right? I need these, it includes rest, it includes,
Yes. Yeah.
good food, right? All of the things that we need to keep our vessels happy and healthy, and our minds happy and healthy. We deserve a beautiful home. We deserve to have, the basics of life, given to us, provided for us through our work or through however a source wants to give it to us. I don't really care how it comes, to be honest. And to be able to fill our own cups so that we can continue to give from that space of joy, because that's what we're here to do. Yeah.
I love it, Anna. Wow. Ladies, this has just been such a wonderful conversation. I've absolutely enjoyed every part of this. As we come to an end today, I just want to thank each of you, Shiloh, Anna, and Tamala, for your honesty, for your depth, for your openness and willingness to share, and the care that you brought to this conversation. Today, we named the historical roots of healer suppression and explored how these inherited patterns continue to influence our modern practice, from our visibility, our authority, our boundaries, our pricing, and just trusting ourselves. We've discussed the importance of recognizing what is the collective and what is ours, and doing that inner work, as Shiloh mentioned, and being present to that, and how awareness can support steadier, more embodied practice. So, in our next episode, Identity and Integrity in a Collective Field, we're going to explore how practitioners define who they are, what they stand for, and how they hold integrity with today's spiritual landscape. So, thank you to everyone who has joined us today. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you.